Hello, and welcome to Change the Face of Yoga, teaching toddlers through golden oldies. I'm very excited to be talking to lots of yoga teachers who will explain their passion for teaching yoga to students with different ages, physical fitness levels, wellness levels, and different goals. They will explain the benefits of yoga for these students and will be including teacher tips and pose modifications. I am Stephanie Cunningham of Yoga Lightness, and I've been teaching over 50s for 10 years. So this area is my passion and the passion of many other yoga teachers that you will be listening to in this series. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get started. This is episode 123 of Changing the Face of Yoga, and my guest today is Carla Simpson. And Carla is known for being full of energy, love, and inspiration. She's very enthusiastic about life and love and wants to experience as much of what life has to offer. She has discovered her why. It is my mission in life to help others live a happier and more fulfilled life. And she's going to share with us how she uses this inspiration in her yoga teaching and to help and assist her students, shall we say. She opened her own yoga school 4 years ago, Happy Hot Yoga, and they have a range of classes to suit everyone. And they also are a yoga community, a real family. We have social dinners once a month, workshops, and yoga retreats. So welcome, Carla. And would you like to add anything to that introduction?
No, I think you got it all, but thank you very much for having me on the show. And you're right, I do. I'm a big lover of life, that's for sure.
Great. Okay, let's start there. You said you were on a journey of self-discovery, and that's when you discovered your why. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Growing up, I hated yoga. You couldn't have got me into a yoga class at all. My mum was always doing yoga. When I just remember like getting up in the morning and her out in the lounge room in a yoga mat, doing a class. And it wasn't for me. And she'd always be trying to encourage me. But I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie. So growing up, I got very into, fitness and running marathons, things like that. And it was only that my knees was really starting to ache a lot in the long runs. And my physio kept saying, you should go to yoga. It would really help you. And I was like, nah, I don't do yoga. Anyway, one day, I sort of was like, I cried my way to the finish of one of the races. And I was in my head, I just thought, okay, my knees, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I dragged myself to a yoga class. And yeah, it wasn't the first class that definitely changed my life. But in that first sort of journey into the first few classes, I first started with Bikram Yoga, more because it was the adrenaline as well of the hotness, the hard. I found it very difficult, and I couldn't believe that, I couldn't do some of it. So that was what dragged me back. And then I had gone to visit my friend who lived like a little bit out of the town that I live in. And I thought I was going to do a Bikram Yoga class. But when I got there, the teacher had said, oh, sorry, we had to change the schedule. It's not Bikram Yoga. And at that point, I would have walked away. But I'd already paid, and I was like a student. I was a student then, so I was like, okay, fine. So I dragged myself into this class, and it was like a flow class, and it was strong, but it was just something the teacher said at the end in savasana, and it honestly changed my life. I still remember it. I was just laying there, and she says, "So it's now time to turn off, the voices in your head, and if you think you have no voices in your head, well, that was a voice that just told you that you have no voice in your head." And it was just like I had this complete awakening. I was like, oh my God, I have a voice in my head and I'm not the only one. And then that sort of, that was the start for me. It was really like I wanted to find out more about how to find that stillness in that space. And I started to get really into yoga then and more into mindfulness and meditation. And I really discovered what true happiness is without all of the, our voice telling us different things or what we should be doing or could be doing, but really how I could just feel happy and joyful in any moment. And that it was my choice. So that was the start of my whole journey. And and then I just really loved what yoga had done for me. And the closest yoga school to where I live was about 20 minutes. And I just one day, sort of having a conversation with my ex-boyfriend at the time, sort of said, well, why isn't there not a yoga school that's good around our area? And then anyway, that put the plan in my head and the plant started to grow. And so I opened up my own yoga school.
Oh, excellent. You say that you are helping people find their purpose, and you have a multitude of ways to do it. I was very impressed. You've been an entrepreneur, a business owner, a global backpacker, and a podcast host. And so I like all these different ways you're looking at it. But you are a yoga teacher, and so how are you kind of trying to meet that purpose, that mission, that why through your yoga studio or your yoga teaching?
Well, really for me, it's just about sharing my experiences and my knowledge throughout my classes and throughout the studio. So, if you come to a class with me, you'll probably get one of my stories about, just different things like working in, I've just spent a month working in an orphanage in India over December. And so for the first part of me coming back, I was sharing stories of that. And I'm really just trying to educate people that we can be happy no matter what's going on in our lives at any one point. And, life is a journey. We're always going to have ups and downs, kind of like yoga class. We're falling in, we're falling out of poses. But there is that stillness and there is that being okay with whatever's going on around us. So that's really what, for me, it is about. And just really helping people to be happy with themselves. We spend this so much time growing up trying to change ourselves. Every advert on television need to, wear this makeup, whiten our teeth or whatever it is. But I think we all can just learn that we're perfect the way we are. And it's a hard journey sometimes, but that's what I want to help people, realize.
So, okay, this might sound a little, well, anyway, your teacher, your school is Happy Hot Yoga. So I assume that you're doing hot yoga. You said that you like the adrenaline at one point. And so it's probably, some of them are probably very physical, but it sounds to me like you are saying that, and please tell me I'm wrong if I am, the meditation, the stillness, how you think about yourself, the self-talk, all of that is more of the journey to being happy than actually the physical. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the physical just helps us sometimes find that space. And I think a lot of us feel good when we are being physically active as well. So we have a range of classes at the studio. We're not all just power strong classes. We have, the slow, the meditation, the yin classes as well. But I think that often it's in that flow or it's in that everyday life, where it can get chaotic, that we sometimes need to learn to just be okay with the stillness and be able to find the stillness even when, things are strong around us or we are caught up in an argument or whatever it is, or a yoga class. But definitely it's, I think that you find the true happiness when you can allow this, not necessarily the stillness, but you can allow yourself to have maybe the chitter chatter or the voice talking on the sidelines, and you don't have to be so self-involved in that, choosing to react or choosing to just let it pass by.
Okay, I see. So you now have a yoga studio that's in an area that didn't have one before. And how are you introducing the community, shall we say, to yoga?
Well, we've been here for 4 years now, so word of mouth is definitely a great tool. But I do lots of different things. Like we have obviously our Facebook and social media, but we have big signs up, and I put all our flyers and offer free classes to lots of people in cafes around the area. We might go out. I've spoken at events So earlier this year, I spoke at a big event in our Gosford, which was a health event. So I spoke and hosted the meditation in the morning there. So people, it's just brand awareness really. But I think really it's just been about word of mouth for us. And it's taken it has taken 4 years to build the studio up to a good, where I've got other teachers now. We're running workshops, teacher trainings, things like that. But it has been a climb. I'm not going to lie.
Didn't happen overnight.
No, definitely not. And that's what I love about it too, is it has been a journey. And I remember those days of, first opening the studio and having, no one show up to some classes. And it broke my heart, but, you just got to chug on, and the next class, someone will show up, and that's what happened. And over time it has, grown.
When you talked about your first experiences with yoga, I think it's important sometimes that we take into consideration what the student is going through, because our own ego, it is upsetting when you have a class and nobody shows up. I've been there. But when you're talking about, the first class wasn't all that great, but you went back, and then you finally found what made sense for you. So how do we make that transition for the students, especially a new student, to understand that there's so much that yoga offers, and maybe this particular class or this particular way of doing things isn't it, but that there's lots and lots that they can dip into?
Oh, for sure. And that, I think, is something that is so important that new students understand. So when a new student first walks into my studio, always introduce myself, and just like we have a community, so everyone might be chatting around, and we'll, introduce ourselves to the new person. Even the other students will. My students are very welcoming as well, which is lovely. And then, throughout the class, I always talk about, picking the options that best suit you, taking your time. But the yoga is a journey, and we're not really in here training to be able to, stand on our head or to do all these amazing cool poses. I think we're just really training to become better at life. And that's what I often say to people, is that, not every day is our day. And, some classes I turn up to and I still, I walk away thinking, oh God, I've had enough, I'm done, but it's just the shit that I'm going through on that day. And sometimes if we can step back from being so involved in ourselves and just let it all fall off the mat, then we can realize that. And I do believe that it takes a new client a few classes. And I do love to watch that journey myself. Even in the first savasana, I always say, you see these new people, and I was one of them. They can't shut their eyes. Their eyes are looking around at everyone else, and they can't sit still. They're twitching. But then I always say about the 4 classes in, you see it all drop away. And you just see them slowly start to sink into their mat, and they shut their eyes, and it's like that light bulb goes off, and they're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But I think that it is a journey, and I think it's important to explain that to clients. And it's still a continued journey for me as well. Gosh, I don't think we're ever going to be perfect. And I mean, there's no such thing anyway, but I'm training to be better at my life. And I think yoga helps me become a better person, and to make better choices in my life.
Okay. Now, you've been a variety of things. I mean, you're obviously, I love a global backpacker. And you're doing podcasts, and I assume that the entrepreneur and business owner has to do with yoga, but maybe you had other things. But why did you choose the yoga path, given all of these great things that you've done?
Well, I still, I guess, do them as well. I always say to people, I'm a jack of all trades. But I think that yoga really, I always say yoga changed my life, and it made me become a softer person, not so hard. Not that I was hard, but, and I still am very driven, still, that type A personality, but yoga just allows me to come back to, I think, my roots. And, and I still travel a lot, and the yoga's taught me all about, it's not just about, yoga's taught me so much about just the way to live life. gratitude and kindness, and just being conscious of trying to be conscious of all the moments that I get to experience. So maybe once when I backpacked, I wasn't so aware of, everything going on around me. Where now when I do it, it's a totally different experience. And I'm just forever humbled and grateful for the people I meet and the kindness that is shown across all areas of the world. And I do think that yoga and the yoga teachings, the yoga philosophy has helped me as a person to be able to understand that and to understand myself more and to understand really what makes me feel the best. And it might not necessarily be the yoga practice, but it might be showing acts of gratitude to people or smiling at someone down the street. But for me, that whole lesson came through yoga.
Okay. So you've really, yes, the athletic, the asanas are great, but you've really delved deeper into that. Do you try to introduce the yoga philosophy in your classes?
Yeah, always. We're always doing different teachings. Yeah. Each week I'll have a different theme of the week, and we're always learning about all that. Yes.
Okay, good. And how do your students react to that?
Oh, they love it. They love it.
Oh, good.
I know that. Yeah. So at the studio, you get like all different, you might still get a workout, but you definitely get some yoga learnings. And I do a monthly newsletter with a little passage on it. There's always things. And I do believe that, as I just said, that everyone that comes through our studio will walk away maybe more physically fit. Yes, maybe not. They might come to the meditation and the yin classes, but they all come with a deeper understanding of what I believe life is truly about.
Okay. Is there anything that you would particularly like to either expand on that we've talked about, or something we haven't touched on at all that you would like to share with the listeners?
No, not so much. Not so much. I mean, my purpose and my why now is to help people, be able to make those conscious choices every day that, they can choose to be happy. They can choose to smile no matter what's going on around them. And yes, for me, the teachings came from yoga, but that was my personal journey. So whatever teachings anyone can get from me or from my journey, then hopefully that helps them become better in living their life. Because I think we're all on a different journey, and yoga is so broad. There's so many wonderful things that we can learn from yoga or take from yoga. And my job, I feel, is just to start, to open up what those lessons are in the way that people like to experience it at my studio. And then hopefully they can take that and share that with their life and their families and the way that they live their world.
Okay. So you're trying to help people find their purpose, is what you told me. How does that go from having a yoga class? And I understand that you're certainly trying to offer them a really large spectrum of yoga. But do you think that's how they come to that purpose, when they can quiet the mind and feel a little better about themselves?
I totally believe that, yeah, when you start to quieten your mind and you realize you've got an intuition and that intuition is talking to us. And if we allow ourselves to listen to that, that's when your purpose comes out.
Okay.
All right. Sometimes it's a journey to get to that point, but that is definitely what happens, I believe, and in my own experience.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the podcast. Why did you decide to start a podcast?
I loved podcasts myself. I love listening to podcasts. I was always, for me, I have a little puppy dog, and I was always walking down the street listening to something, and I always, it just makes me smile. It was one of my favorite things to do. And I was just talking to a friend over, how I wanted to grow I wanted to share my story. I wanted to share my learnings and my teachings about yoga and happiness, and how I could do that maybe on a bigger scale. And it was literally over a cup of coffee. She said, well, Carla, you're such a great chatter. You could do your own podcast. And then I was like, I'd never even thought about it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then again, a seed was planted in my head. And then I sort of, again, just sort of let it sit there. And then throughout my, my yoga, my meditation, listening to my intuition, I decided that, I'd give it a go and see what would happen. And that's what happened.
So explain your podcast purpose, or whatever you would like to call it, in a few words. What are you trying? I know that you interview people, but what are you trying to get across?
Happiness, and that happiness is a choice.
Okay.
So that's my main message. But then I interview different people from just all different areas of life that are doing things. And I ask them, things that make them happy, because everyone finds happiness from a different, it might be, and a lot of people think, this is what I'm trying to change the education about, is that happiness doesn't come from external, always external things. Like we grow up thinking if we get that job, or we get that house, or, we get that boyfriend, then we're going to be happy. But happiness really comes from within and the choices that we're making every day. And I think that yoga's helped me learn to listen to my intuition so that I can make those right choices that then make me a happier person. So then I'm trying to just get everyone's view on what they do to make themselves that little bit happier every day. And then we educate more people out there that, these little things like, maybe smiling at the person down the street, or, someone was saying the happiest moment is when they call their mum every day just to say hello to their mum. Mm-hmm. So just that there's so many different ways we can live our life and be consciously aware of the choices we're making to make sure that we feel good and we feel, happy, and we can learn to listen to our intuition and be more complete with just even the incompletes.
Okay. So it sounds really interesting to have, all these people talking about what makes them happy. I agree with you. I bet that most of them aren't external, but more internal about what you do and what you think.
Exactly.
So thank you so much, Carla. This has been great. I'm going to give you guys Carla's contact details in case you'd like to get a little bit more to know about her. Her email is gethappynow@Carla Marie, and Marie is MAREE.com.au. Her website is www.carlamarie.com.au. And she also has happyhotyoga.com.au. And her Facebook is Happy Hot Yoga Woy. For those of you in the States, it's WOY. That's a town here in Australia. And Instagram is Carla Marie Simpson and Happy Hot Yoga. And thank you so much, Carla, for coming on the podcast. I really love your message. I think it's great, and that it's coming through you as a result or as a start from yoga, I think is really great.
And I definitely, yoga is something that's part of me now, and I could never imagine my life without it. And once I could never imagine my life with it. So for all those people out there that, haven't quite yet stepped into that, it can be scary to step onto that mat. But honestly, I say to people all the time, it changed my life.
Great. So thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
Thank you for that wonderful interview. If you would like to be a guest on Changing the Face of Yoga, please go to my website, www.yogalightness.com.au, and under the Changing the Face of Yoga tab, you can complete Be Our Guest form. After reviewing the form and finding it applicable to this podcast, we will send you a link to schedule an interview. Please download, review, and tell your friends of any podcasts that are of interest to you and to them. If you would like to contact me, send an email to info@yogalightness.com.au. And thank you for listening to
changing the face of yoga.